So establishing myself in the here and now, adjusting my posture physically, releasing tensions in the body and the mind. Coming back to the breathing. Breathing in, I know that I'm breathing in. Breathing out, I know that I'm breathing out. Knowing I will get old, I breathe in. Knowing I cannot escape old age, I breathe out. Getting old, no escape. Knowing I will get sick, I breathe in. Knowing I cannot escape sickness, I breathe out. Getting sick, no escape. Knowing that I will die, I breathe in. Knowing that I cannot escape death, I breathe out. Dying, no escape. Knowing that one day I will have to let go, I will have to abandon all that I love and cherish today, I breathe in. Knowing that I cannot escape having to let go all that I cherish today, I breathe out. Abandoning what I cherish, no escape. Knowing that my actions are my only true belongings, I breathe in. Knowing that I cannot escape the consequences of my actions, I breathe out. Actions, true belongings, no escape from consequences. Determined to live my days deeply in mindfulness, I breathe in, seeing the joy and the benefit of living mindfully. I breathe out, living mindfully, seeing joy. Vowing to offer joy each day to my beloved, I breathe in. Vowing to ease the pain of my beloved, I breathe out. Offering joy, easing pain. Offering joy to all beings, I breathe in. Easing the pain of all beings, I breathe out. Offering joy, easing pain. All right. So we will continue with invoking the Bodhisattva's names. I'm actually going to put the text up so it's a little easier, so you don't have to like listen to me. It's a lot nicer that way. And I will keep everybody still muted. So, just so that you so, just see what's going on here. Okay. So give me a second. We invoke your name, Avalokiteshvara. We aspire to learn your way of listening in order to help relieve the suffering in the world. You know how to listen in order to understand. We invoke your name in order to practice listening with all our attention and open-heartedness. We shall sit and listen without any prejudice. We will sit and listen without judging or reacting. We will sit and listen in order to understand. We will sit and listen so attentively that we will be able to hear what the other person is saying and also what is being left unsaid. We know that just by listening deeply, we already alleviate a great deal of pain and suffering in the other person. We invoke your name, Manjushri. We aspire to learn your way, which is to be still and to look deeply into the heart of things and into the hearts of people. We will look with all our attention and open-heartedness. We will look with unprejudiced eyes. We will look without judging or reacting. We will look deeply so that we will be able to see and understand the roots of suffering, the impermanent and selfless nature of all that is. We will practice your way of using the sword of understanding to cut through the bonds of suffering, thus freeing ourselves and other species. We invoke your name, Samantabhadra. We aspire to practice your vow to act with the eyes and heart of compassion, to bring joy to one person in the morning and to ease the pain of one person in the afternoon. We know that the happiness of others is our own happiness, and we aspire to practice joy on the path of service. We know that every word, every look, every action, and every smile can bring happiness to others. We know that if we practice wholeheartedly, we ourselves may become an inexhaustible source of peace and joy for our loved ones and for all species. We invoke your name, Shittigarbha. We aspire to learn your way of being present where there is darkness, suffering, oppression, and despair, so we can bring light, hope, relief, and liberation to those places. We are determined not to forget about or abandon those in desperate situations. We will do our best to establish contact with those who cannot find a way out of their suffering, those whose cries for help, justice, equality, and human rights are not being heard. We know that hell can be found in many places on earth. We will do our best not to contribute to creating more hells on earth and to help transform the hells that are already in existence. We will practice in order to realize the qualities of perseverance and stability, so that, like the earth, we can always be supportive and faithful to those in need. We invoke your name, Sadaparibhuta. We aspire to learn your way of never doubting or underestimating any living being. With great respect, you say to all you meet, you are someone of great value. You have Buddha nature. I see this potential in you. Like you, we will look with a wise, compassionate gaze, so we are able to hold up a mirror where others can see their true ultimate nature reflected. We will remind people who feel worthless that they too are a precious wonder of life. We vow to water only the positive seeds in ourselves and in others, so that our thoughts, words, and actions can encourage confidence and self-acceptance in ourselves, our children, and our loved ones, and in everyone we meet. Inspired by the great faith and insight that everyone is Buddha, we will practice your way of patience and inclusiveness, so we can liberate ourselves from ignorance and misunderstanding and offer freedom, peace, and joy to ourselves, to others, and to our society. Just a technical question. Did that come through? Okay. On my screen, it kind of all got convoluted, so I was like, I don't know what's going on here. So, all right. So my suggestion is, yes, Katie?
Your volume was low in the beginning. I increased my volume.
I'm sorry, can you start again?
Your volume was low in the beginning of the Bodhisattva invocation. I mean, I just increased it, but it changed from when you were talking prior to when you went into that. I mean, I was able to modify it on my end, but just FYI.
Okay, yeah, it's because there's, when I use the bell a lot, I have to have the microphone constantly, so it's, yeah, technical difficulties. So my suggestion is we take a few minutes break, have some tea, whatever, bathroom break, whatever, and let's come back in 3 or 4 minutes. I will sound the bell, so it'll be there'll be a clear knowledge of when we're back. Okay.
So the subject of the talk is these two famous poems.
Sorry about that. Can you hear me now? Technical difficulties, my apologies. The subject of our contemplation are these two poems that are very famous historically in Chinese Buddhism. And they come out of something called the Platform Sutra, the Taijing, which is one of those sutras that are they're not from the Buddha's time, and they're not even meant to often you have sutras that are written way after the Buddha is no longer around, and they're written as if like for example the Diamond Sutra or the Lotus Sutra. They're meant to represent something that the Buddha was there. This is very clearly not. This is actually the Platform Sutra is a Dharma talk that Hui Neng gives. And he tells the story of how he came to be the sixth patriarch of Zen. Now, the important thing here is to know that, well, I don't know if it's not important, but it's worth noting maybe that there is no clarity about the historical so-called truthfulness of what's being said here, that this sutra was actually written 100 years later by someone from Hui Neng's school. So supposedly the talk was recorded by, or transcribed, I guess, by someone by the name of Fa Hai, same name as the Australian Fa Hai in Deer Park. But it's hard to know. There's no other historical records that really support any of this. So this is someone telling their story. So the story is that Hui Neng is, as a child, he goes to the marketplace in China, usually very noisy and very chaotic. And he hears a recitation of the Diamond Sutra. And he immediately gets tremendous resonance of this, and so-called gets enlightened. He something happens to him. And then he goes and becomes a monk. He's illiterate, supposedly at that time. His father was supposedly was relatively well-to-do, but fell of grace or died or something. So it's him and his mother, which is why he's at the market. He's doing chores for other people or something like that. So he goes to the monastery, and he works in the kitchen. So he's kind of being sent to do menial jobs. He's kind of an unimportant person, even though he clearly has been, he's got it already, kind of thing. And then the fifth patriarch of Zen, Hongren, is saying everybody should write a poem, a gatha, that reflects their understanding of the Dharma. And everyone says, oh, well, we're not going to bother writing a gatha, because the purpose of this gatha, sort of gatha competition sort of thing, is to figure out who is going to take over from the fifth patriarch, who's going to get the bowl and robe, who's going to get the transmission. And we all know that Shen Xiu is the head monk. He's the person. So nobody writes anything. And Shen Xiu also thinks, and this is according to Hui Neng, so this is not Shen Xiu himself saying this, but Hui Neng says Shen Xiu is thinking, oh, I don't know if I have the right understanding, but it's expected of me to write the gatha. So he goes and writes the gatha on a wall that's about to be painted. So it's kind of like, quote unquote, anonymous. He's not saying I want to win this competition or something like that. He kind of supposedly does it anonymously. And at the same time, Hui Neng says that, Shen Xiu says that I need to write this gatha because, number one, people expect me, and number two, because I also want the transmission. So there's, according to Hui Neng, there is ambition there. We don't know. It really doesn't matter. So Shen Xiu puts out a gatha and, writes this gatha, and this is the gatha. Let me just, it'll be easier to, okay. The body is a body tree. The mind is a bright mirror stand. Continuously wipe it diligently, so as to let no dust annoy the heart or accumulate on the heart. So that's the gatha of Shen Xiu. And now the story continues that everybody says, oh, amazing gatha, blah, 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 and this is wonderful. And then Hui Neng, who works in the kitchen, is told out in the outside world of the monastery, there is this gatha on the wall, and he says, well, I want to see it. So, he goes and he sees, and he doesn't know how to write, suppose, and he says, I want to write a gatha too, so please write it for me. And so this is his gatha. At the root, body has no tree. The bright mirror also has no stand. At the root, there is not a single thing. Where would the dust be attracted to? Whoops, I think I didn't quite share that. It wasn't shared, was it? No, the written stuff. Okay, let me do that so you could, sorry, something's not operating terribly well with my skills right now. So this is the Gatha in writing, so you can see it. So we have very different, kind of like we have one Gatha and then we have a response. And then what happens is, according in the Platform Sutra, Hui Neng says, he's the writer of the second sutra, he says, so the fifth patriarch, everybody says, you know, kind of, whatever, you know, because it's not by, you know, and the fifth patriarch sees the Gatha and he recognizes what's going on. And he goes, okay, this is a really good Gatha, but he says, no, 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 unimportant, and we can go and paint this wall. But that evening, he invites Hui Neng to his room, and he, this is where it gets kind of interesting, kind of almost contradictory. He gives him he transmits to him the secret meanings of the Diamond Sutra, which is interesting because Hui Neng says that he already understood the Diamond Sutra from hearing it for the first time in the marketplace. So kind of interesting. But more importantly, he transmits to him, he gives him the robe and the bowl, which means he gives him the transmission of the Dharma. And he also, interestingly enough, tells him, and he actually takes him to the river, to cross the river and run away to wherever. I guess it was somewhere in the south, because people are going to be very upset at you, and there will be upheaval, and this is indeed what happens according to the Platform Sutra. Is Hui Neng is being chased by different monks who want the bowl and the robe. They want the transmission, and they even threaten to kill him. And one of them, Hui Neng, you know, actually, you know, he transmits the Dharma to this guy who actually came to kill him and get the robe and bowl from him. And from then on, there's supposed to be two schools in Zen, which both of them basically disappear a few hundred years later and become something else, of course. The school of instant enlightenment, so to speak, of Hui Neng, and the school of gradual enlightenment of Shen Xiu. So that's kind of like the story. And it's interesting to observe the story because we can see how, you know, we think, oh, in today's world, we have so much politics and so much weird stuff going on. And then you can see, you know, this happens even in monasteries, even people who are like really, we're in a spiritual community and a spiritual practice, and you know, it's like we can't help ourselves kind of thing. You know, we have ambitions and we have dogmas and we believe that we're right. And so it's really interesting, and it's interesting to also take the two Gathas and look at that, look at what these dichotomies are really about. So when we look, let me see what we have the text of the first Gatha. So when we look at the first Gatha, and just to remember that the second Gatha is a response. In other words, the second Gatha does not exist without the first. It just, it is. So the first Gatha is, the body is a body tree. The mind is a bright mirror stand. Constantly wipe it diligently, so as to let no dust annoy the heart, accumulate in the heart. So this speaks for, you know, first of all, there's the recognition, the body is a body tree, the mind is a bright mirror stand. The word stand is the same as platform, so that's where the Platform Sutra, the name to a large extent comes from, although platform is also where you speak from. So you know, it can be said that this is, the sutra is about what Hui Neng speaking from a platform. But it still is the same character as what this mirror is standing on. So the body is a body tree and the mind is a bright mirror stand. So there is an acknowledgement, oh, we all have Buddha nature. The Buddha nature is there. But I have to get rid of the stuff that's around it. You know, all my desires and ambitions and angers and fears and all that kind of stuff, I have to do some work to reveal that Buddha nature. So continuously wipe it diligently. No, let no dust annoy the heart, accumulate in the heart. So that's the work of practice. You know, we can say that's the so-called historical dimension where we diligently practice, observing the body and the mind, practicing mindfulness, figuring out what supports my practice of waking up and waking up my Buddha nature. So, and I think that's something that we all relate to, that we do have to diligently work. And then Hui Neng's Gatha is sort of, in a way, you can say maybe poo-poos it and says, at the root, the body has no tree. The bright mirror also has no stand. Fundamentally, everything lacks any one thing. Where would the dust be accumulated at? Okay, so it's kind of taking the perspective of the ultimate dimension. And the ultimate dimension, yeah, you know, everything lacks any one thing. So there's no stand, there's no tree, there's, you know, and we just have to open. Hence the idea of, you know, instant enlightenment as opposed to Gunaji. So in a way, you can say it's poo-pooing the first Gatha, and in a way, it's sort of saying basically, bear the diligence of practice in mind, but don't get too dogmatic about it. You know, and we have to remember that Hui Neng is someone who is a Diamond Sutra proponent. This is his sutra. You know, this is the basis, and the Diamond Sutra is all about no concepts. So this Gatha is basically saying, when we practice and we practice diligently, we keep cleaning. You know how when you clean your house and you can get very involved in all this clean, we can get very dogmatic about it. It's clean enough, it's not clean enough. You're supposed to clean it with this materials, not with this material, with this sponge, not with that sponge, kind of thing. You know, we get very involved in the cleaning and we forget that you know, yes, we're cleaning for cleaning, but we're also cleaning. We don't want to spend our whole life cleaning. We want to live life. Okay, so we're cleaning so that our life will be convenient, so that we won't have dust everywhere in the house and be eating dust and drinking dust and whatever. So it's kind of Hui Neng is saying, you know, we can get too uptight about the practice and we can forget about what it's all about, which is liberation from our ideas and our concepts. That when we're so concentrating on the dust, we get stuck in ideas, and we can get stuck in ideas and concepts. So I'm not sure that there is such a huge disparity between the two gathas. Of course, historically, you know, there is this you know, for many, many centuries, there was this whole thing about the Hui Neng Gatha is the ultimate gatha because it's about the ultimate dimension. And in the last, you know, say century or whatever, you know, people have been starting to say, no, this is not, it's not quite so extreme, you know. And Shen Xiu is, you know, Shen Xiu was no slouch, by the way. You know, he was quite a high monk, and he clearly knew what he was talking about. He lived a very, very long time, and also, by the way, at different points, he was both embraced and disavowed by emperors. That's a very typical Chinese thing, that that people, you know, of different stature, of different fields, would be embraced and taken by the imperial court, and then they'll be thrown out like they're useless. And that's a very interesting thing for us to contemplate. You know, the impermanence of statue. That, you know, you think you know where you stand one day, and then tomorrow the emperor just banishes you off to exile, and at some point you might be called back from exile. And, you know, just looking at our own lives, and we who have in the West who have not been used to this and looking at things like pandemics, like fires, you know, we can start to see that a little, we can relate to that a little bit more perhaps now than we used to. So there's many, many ways to sort of, you know, I was thinking that there are a whole bunch of themes in these gathas. And one of them, the first one is very clearly quality of practice. You know, that most of us need to set up the conditions for our Buddha nature to thrive, because we also have Mara nature in us. So we kind of have to keep cleaning the Mara nature away in order for Buddha nature to come out. And then we have to look at what these conditions are for each one of us. We have to kind of figure out, you know, like, you know, Nick was saying on Tuesday, I figured out that I need to go out to nature. I need to be out in the woods in order for me to thrive. So we need to figure out what these conditions are, and we need to create them. And that takes work. It is, you know, we're diligently wiping, you know, wiping away the conditions that are not conducive for my practice. You know? So, for example, you know, we've all been in retreats, we've all done mindful eating, we all say, oh, this is a wonderful practice, and then we go home and it basically goes out the window, and we're lucky if we have one mindful meal a week in our regular life, because it takes a certain amount of discipline and work, you know, dusting to do that, you know, and that's real life. You know, it's like we can say that we would love to have every meal in mindfulness and take 45 minutes for every meal, but the truth is we generally don't. So then we have to say to ourselves, okay, so what would it take? What do I need? Is it worthwhile? You know, is it setting up a condition? Does it wipe enough dust for me to unravel my Buddha nature? And then the answer can be yes or no or whatever, but I need to keep asking, you know, what are the practices that are going to nurture me, that are going to allow my Buddha nature to come out more strongly, more frequently? And by the way, this Thai was very famous for saying, we're all part-time Buddhas. We're all Buddhas, but most of us are part-time Buddhas. You know, because we're a Buddha one moment, then after a little while, we don't practice so much, and then our Buddha nature gets weaker, and then we get sucked into our worries and our fears and our angers and our desires, etc. And that, by the way, that is a phrase, not so much the part-time, because that's an English phrase, but that does come from the Platform Sutra. Hui Neng says the exact same thing. He says everybody is a Buddha. We just forget it and we let go of it, and then we come back to it. So we are all Buddha, but most of us have to actually do something in order to maintain this Buddha nature. It tends to slip from us. So that's why we have to find out what are the conditions. So for example, we say, I already have all the conditions necessary for my happiness. But there's usually one condition missing, the internal one, the dusting off of my desires and my antsiness, etc. When that condition is met, when I've wiped out, when I'm clearing out my mind, then I actually do have all the conditions necessary for my happiness. All I need to do is I'm still breathing, and I may not have a whole bunch of external things that I may have wanted, but the internal condition of recognizing that I have the happiness, all the conditions for happiness already here, has been met. It's an internal condition. That condition I need to do something for. Because the mind, the reason why we stress, why there is the teaching, I already have all the conditions that are necessary for my happiness already here and now. The reason we have this teaching is because our nature, we tend to not see that. We have to do something. We have to switch something in ourselves. You can call it a switch, or you can call it dusting off, wiping off the dust. But we do need to do something. Most of us are not so quickly or naturally inclined to just automatically go, oh yes, all the conditions for my happiness are right here. It just isn't, most of us tend to kvetch a little bit more before we get there. So what Shen Xiu is saying is freedom comes through discipline. And this is quite hard for many of us because we don't like discipline, we don't like work. Now, this is not, by the way, I just want to make it clear. Freedom through discipline is not what is written on the gates of Auschwitz. Okay, this is not work will set you free. Totally different concept. Okay, freedom through discipline is what say a pianist does. You play the scales and you play the scales and you play the scales so you can play Rachmaninoff. Okay? So it's different than work. There's a playfulness in the way you play the scales, and you play the scales, and of course, as a 7-year-old, or when you start playing, whenever that is, the scales are just the scales. And if Pablo Casals plays the scales, they're very different, and there's a certain playfulness and experimentation in the scales, even in just the scales. Okay? So, but you cannot become a great artist, a great pianist, or a great cellist without daily practice. Every great musician will tell you that they're practicing every day, many hours, no matter how they can have a stellar reputation, and they're playing Carnegie Hall and the Royal Albert Hall, on a regular basis. They're still doing the same practice that the 7-year-old is doing. There's just no way around it. So finding a way to maintain discipline. And this is where Thai was very good at, rather than saying, well, we need discipline, what Thai says, we need joy. Because if we can find the joy in practice, if we can find that discipline is actually joyful, then we'll do it. We'll never do something that we don't enjoy. You do it for a certain amount of time because it's good for you. It's you should take this vitamin, it's good for you. And then one day it's like you're saying, but the vitamin's really bitter, and the pill's really big, and it's really uncomfortable, and I have to take it at a certain hour that I really don't like taking it. I'm not doing it anymore. And then maybe a week later you'll take it once, and then 3 weeks later you'll take it again because you feel guilty because it's good for you. But if you enjoy it, you keep taking it. So, and I think that's part of what the Hui Neng Gatha is also saying, is we have to find joy, we have to have openness, we have to find the spacious in practice and not get too caught up. You practice like this. And we all do this. You see this in practice centers, you see it everywhere. You see it in the best communities. You see communities who exclude other people because they're not practicing well enough according to their opinion. You've seen this has literally happened in the Tibetan communities. There've been murders in monasteries. It's been a little while. It's been in the 90s. There were some issues about teachings. The Dalai Lama said this deity is not, you should not refer to this deity, and that created this big schism. And then there was literally a murder around, well, if you believe in this deity, or you're not supposed to. I mean, it gets crazy, and at the same time, crazy is life. We all have a crazy mind. We just have to look at what our politics is right now, and we're saying, oh, this is just in the last 4 years we've become so intolerant of other opinions. But it's human nature, to be intolerant of other opinions. So it's just good to bear that in mind. And then to remember that we have to keep the practice fresh. We have to make the practice fresh. And that's another term that Thai loved to remind us, keeping ourselves fresh. Because if I do the practice constantly and I constantly wipe my mirror, what can happen is that I start to only see dust everywhere because I'm so concentrated on removing dust and I no longer see what the mirror is reflecting. So, so I need to kind of constantly play, if you like, play games with the practice, but allow it to be fresh. So that's one of the things, for example, with the Tuesday, the reason why I do the Tuesday night groups is to, quote unquote, play games, to experiment, not to take things for granted, to try and look at the practice in different ways and experiment with different ways of doing things. Granted, through sitting meditation. Of course, in life we have a lot more openness to experiment. So, and then to remember that the purpose of practice is liberation. So I can say I'm liberating myself from suffering, and in order to liberate myself from suffering, I'm liberating myself from my ideas, from my concepts, my constrictions. So again, with my practice, I need to keep looking. Is my practice giving me liberation? Is it helping me? Is it moving me in that direction? Or is it just a prescribed thing that I'm supposed to do? So if it's just a prescribed thing that I'm supposed to do, thou shalt sit down and chew 50 times before you swallow, then there's no mindful eating here that's useful, that's conducive for my liberation. And then that practice becomes you're just wiping off dust that doesn't need to accumulate. You're actually accumulating more dust. Okay. So that's where the Hui Neng Gata is much more useful. But most of the time, we have a way of we kind of get behind, we kind of get lazy, we get sucked into life, and it's just, there's certain inconveniences that happen, and we forget to practice. And that's where the Shen Xiu Gata, saying, yes, keep wiping, yes, keep wiping, yes, you're a Buddha, yes, you didn't need to wipe the dust. So we have to play constantly and to recognize there's 84,000 doors of liberation. There's no one door. We keep having to find the right door that might get us a little bit more opening. And when we find it, we use it. And then when it's no longer useful, we let it go. And this is all stuff straight out of the basic Buddha teachings. Let go of the raft. Don't carry the raft. So I think Hui Neng is simply trying to say, yes, practice, but don't get too involved. Of course, we were not in that monastery. We don't know what he may have been reacting to. Nothing to do with the Gatha. He may have been seeing a community of monastics that was very hierarchical, very rigid, very whatever. We don't know. I certainly don't. So I think both Gathas are very useful. And just to look. And the other thing, the last part I wanted to talk about, to mention, was because it's so much in the consciousness, and right now very strongly. So, we've had the COVID issues, and then in the last few weeks, we've had these incredible fires in California, and now in Oregon and Washington. And because I've lived in California for so many years, I've been talking to people there, and people are evacuating, et cetera, et cetera. And I was thinking, this is why I wanted to offer the 5 contemplations, the 5 remembrances, sorry, as the meditation, as our first meditation. What happens is that it's very different when you're faced with fire and you're about to, you know, like your life really is, you know, I am of the nature to die, not in 20 years, right now. I'm of the nature to lose everything that I love right now. Practice is very different than I'm reminding myself that I will lose everything. I'm reminding myself that potentially I will be separated from everything I cherish and that I will die. It's a very, so the practice where I remind myself is much more a Shen Xiu type of practice. I keep taking the dust away to remind myself of my Buddha nature. And the practice of the fires at my house is the practice. There's nothing to do but just open up. There's no choice here. And sometimes to remind ourselves that at the end of the day, really, there's only one ambition that really matters. And that's to wake up to my Buddha nature. And however I do it, it's good enough. So I think that's all I have to share. Um, and maybe we can open it up for a little bit of questions before we do contemplations, more contemplation, more another meditation. We can have a break in between. So if anybody would like to unmute themselves, I am going to stop the recording.
So before we start this meditation, we'll do another exercise in a spirit of experimentation and keeping things fresh. Close your eyes and breathe out 3 times, with in-breaths, of course, in between. This is an imagery exercise, so just allow yourself to follow the image, whatever it takes you. See yourself walking on the beach, walking along the beach. Find a spot in the sand that you like. Put down all your stuff there. Take your clothes off. See if there's anything that you want to take with you when you go in the water. Then leave it on the sand. Go into the water. Submerge yourself in the water. Keep dipping in the water. If you want, you can take some sand from the bottom of the water and rub it against you. Keep dipping until you feel renewed. Come out of the water, tracing your steps back to where you left your things. And keep walking. Go over to some rocks where you will find a new set of clothes waiting for you. Put these clothes on. Feel the air on your skin. Notice your hair. Take a deep breath and slowly open your eyes. All right, and then you can close your eyes again. We're going to start these meditations. So just setting the space in the mind to allow questions to just permeate the mind. There may be answers, there may be no answers, and that's totally okay. So just asking myself, what do I practice for? Do I practice to live? To make life more meaningful? To make life happier? Or perhaps I live in order to practice? Has practice become the central theme of my life? Is the theme of my life currently my liberation? Does the practice serve my liberation? What are the conditions that are conducive for my practice, for my growth, for my happiness, for my liberation? What are the conditions that interfere with my practice, my happiness, my liberation? What can I do to nurture the positive conditions? What can I do to not create negative conditions? And how can I work with negative conditions more successfully? So just allowing these questions to permeate the mind. And if at any point you feel like you'd like to write something down to capture any of your insights or ideas from this, just do that with a word or two and keep coming back to just contemplating these questions, just having these questions in the space of the mind. And looking at the qualities that I want to cultivate, the qualities of the Bodhisattvas, being light and easeful, and yet not taking people lightly, the quality of Sadaparibhutta, having perseverance and being with suffering, the qualities of Kshitigarbha, the Bodhisattva of great perseverance, of great aspiration, acting with virtue, with integrity, with worthiness and with joy, the qualities of Samantabhadra, acting with a gentleness that comes from wisdom, the qualities of Manjushri, the Bodhisattva of great understanding, compassion and observing what is not seen, what is heard, the qualities of Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva of great compassion, and cultivating joy and freshness in my practice. I am already a Bodhi tree. I am already a bright mirror stand. What dusting do I need to do in order to have no dust disturb my heart? And looking at what is my direction? What is my mirror? Do I have one? Do I want to have one? Does it need maintaining or adjusting or redirecting? Again, during this period of meditation, if you have any insight or something you'd like to write down, just do so with a word or two. if you like. And looking at, does my mirror need any cleaning? And how do I clean my mirror? How do I set up the conditions for my practice, for being spacious? Can I contemplate? Can I tolerate having no mirror? Liberation is releasing all mirrors, all ideas, all concepts. And contemplating being without a stand, having nothing to latch onto.